So, today we're diving into a really fascinating situation. There's this mandatory ethics course, ETH111, and we've got the internal feedback from the people who teach it. And let me tell you, it reveals a program that's basically at war with itself. What is going on here? Let's get into it. Now, you might think this is just a hypothetical question, but it's not. This is the exact question they asked the instructors. And their answers? Well, they're all over the place, which really sets the stage for this huge disagreement about whether this required class should even exist. And wow, does this slide just lay it all out? On one hand, you've got an instructor giving it a 1 out of 10, a total waste of time. On the other, a perfect 10 out of 10, calling it absolutely necessary. I mean, how on earth can two people teaching the exact same course come away with such completely opposite conclusions? Okay, so to figure that out, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at whether the course is even necessary. Then, we'll try to figure out what its goal is supposed to be. After that, we'll dig into the big instructor dilemma, see if there are any signs of things getting better, and finally, we'll get to the most important part, the student verdict. All right, let's jump right in with that first big question. Is this course really necessary? We're going to diagnose this deep divide in what the instructors think about its fundamental value. And look, that 1-star and 10-star rating, they are not outliers. They really represent two passionate camps. You've got one group that basically feels, when it comes to practical ethics, there's nothing to teach. It's common sense. And then you have another group that sees this as a critical, can't-miss opportunity to talk with students about really important stuff. So this split leads to the next logical question, right? If the instructors can't even agree on the course's value, do they at least agree on its purpose? Turns out, that's a whole other can of worms. And when you look at what different instructors think the goal is, it gets even messier. I mean, just look at this list. It's all over the place. Some are focused on logic and critical thinking. Others want to make students more empathetic. And some just see it as a class for developing soft skills. There's just no single clear vision for what this course is supposed to accomplish. This quote from one instructor really gets to the heart of one perspective. They're arguing that these students have spent years laser-focused on exams, and in the process, they've kind of lost touch. So for this teacher, the course is like a lifeline, a way to pull them back into the real world.
Okay, so this lack of a clear goal, it actually points to an even deeper problem that came up again and again in the feedback. The issue isn't just what is being taught, but who is doing the teaching. And this instructor dilemma seems to be the #1 issue.
And you see it right here. This comment, or something like it, shows up constantly, a plea to bring in actual experts, people from the humanities who are formally trained in ethics. There's this really strong feeling that this isn't a topic just anyone should be teaching off the cuff. And it's not just instructors pointing fingers at their colleagues. Here's one admitting it themselves. It is way beyond my expertise. That's a pretty powerful admission, and it shows you there's a real feeling of being out of their depth among some of the people teaching it. And this next quote, well, it doesn't pull any punches. It suggests the problem is everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're brand new or if you've taught it before. If you're not a professional in this field, you might be just as clueless. So the big point is, the instructors themselves are questioning if they're the right people for the job. But they're not just complaining, right? They actually have some pretty solid ideals on how to fix this. They're all centered on a few key things. Hire actual experts, create a better way to pick instructors, get rid of the quota system that forces people to teach it, and hey, maybe even offer some incentives to get teachers who are genuinely passionate about the subject. This quote just nails the vicious cycle that's happening. You get a professor who already thinks the course is pointless, so they don't put much effort in. The course then flops with the students, which just confirms the professor's original belief. See, it's a classic self-fulfilling prophecy. But, okay, it is not all bad news. Buried in all this criticism, there are actually some real signs of hope, some proof that this course is evolving, and maybe, just maybe, getting better. Take this instructor, for example. Their experience tells a completely different story. This person has taught the course for 3 years, and they talk about their own personal growth and how that experience helps them teach better. So it suggests that, yeah, expertise is great, but maybe experience also really counts. And that's not just a feeling. We've got the numbers to back it up. When you look at the average rating for how necessary the instructors think the course is, you see a real jump. It went from a 6.7 out of 10 to a 7.9 in just 1 year. So even with all the problems, the belief that this course is important is actually growing. Which brings us to the final, and let's be honest, the most important piece of this whole puzzle. We've heard all the drama from the instructors, but what about the students who are actually sitting in these classrooms? So, after all of this back and forth, all the debate, all the complaints, what is the final score? Is all this turmoil behind the scenes poisoning the well for the students, or are they getting something valuable out of it anyway? Well, get ready for this, because the student data is kind of shocking. A full 47% of students said the course was highly useful. Another 43% said it was somewhat useful. Only 10% thought it wasn't useful. You do the math, that is a whopping 90% of students who found real value in this course. So here's the bottom line. For all the internal struggles, the conflicting goals, and the questions about who should be teaching, the course is actually working for the people it's meant for. The signal is getting through all that noise. And that leaves us with one last, really interesting thought to chew on. Everyone agrees the course is inconsistent, but for a subject like practical ethics, where there are no easy answers, is that inconsistency a bug that needs to be fixed? Or could it actually be a feature, showing students a messy, diverse, and very human range of what it means to try and do the right thing?